Inequalities are basically equations. The main difference between those and the standard equations that you would normally see is equations is when two things are literally equal to each other. So they end up using an equal sign. Now, inequalities are not necessarily equal. They either involve a less than symbol, a greater than symbol, a less than or equal to symbol, or a greater than or equal to symbol. But basically, if the equation looks like this and it has one of those weird symbols, then it's an inequality. So we're going to treat it as if it were an equation. The main difference with inequalities is that if you multiply or divide by a negative number, then you must reverse the inequality sign. As a quick example, let's say we have negative 2x is less than or equal to the number 4. To solve this problem, we look at what's happening to x, and x is being multiplied by negative 2. So if x is being multiplied by negative 2, we end up dividing by negative 2, just like any other equation. Now the negative 2's cancel out and it leaves us with an x. But because we do this division by a negative number, we need to flip this sign to a greater than or equal to symbol. So we literally just flip the direction in which that sign is facing. Now we need to do the division. So 4 divided by negative 2. And 4 divided by negative 2 is negative 2. So the answer to this example would be x is greater than or equal to negative 2. So for all of the remaining problems, I'm going to have this note up here because sometimes we're going to need it. And again, we only use it anytime we multiply or divide by a negative number. Going back to our original problem, let's go ahead and solve for x. So we have 7 plus x over 6 is less than 2. We need to get x by itself, so we look at what's happening to x. Well, here's x. If we zoom out a little bit, we have it divided by 6. And if we zoom out a little bit more, we have that 7. So the first thing we need to do is get rid of the 7. How do I get rid of that 7? Well, it's kind of off on its own right now. We can think of it as a positive 7. How do you get rid of a positive 7? We need to subtract 7 from both sides of the inequality. So again, these symbols we're basically treating as an equal sign, except they're not an equal sign. When we subtract 7 on the left-hand side, they cancel out, and it leaves us with x over 6. Now notice that I'm only subtracting 7. I'm not multiplying 7 and I'm not dividing 7. So this set of notes does not apply. That means we're going to leave the sign alone. We're going to leave it as a less than symbol. But now we're going to do 2 minus 7, and 2 minus 7 gives me negative 5. So at this point we have x, and x is being divided by 6. So we need to get rid of that division by 6. The opposite of dividing by 6 is multiplying by 6. So we need to take both sides of the equation and multiply them by 6. Now don't get confused. On the left-hand side, we're not going to do 6 times 6 because one of these is a multiplication by 6, the other one is the division by 6. The 6 is just going to cancel out. And that was the whole point in the first place, is to get rid of the 6, we do the opposite of whatever is happening to it. So when we do that, the 6's go away and it leaves us with x is less than whatever negative 5 times 6 is, and that is negative 30. So our final answer would be x is less than negative 30. Just like any of the other problems, we're going to work this inequality as if it was an equation. So 17 is less than or equal to negative 1 plus 6x. We want to look at what's happening to the x, and we want to undo each of those steps. So here's my x. If I zoom out a little bit more, we have this 6 that's being multiplied by x. And if I zoom out just a bit more, we have this negative 1. So that's the right-hand side of this inequality. And we need to work from the outside in. So we're going to start with this negative 1. We want to get rid of that negative 1. And to do that, you need to do the opposite of minus 1. Opposite of minus 1 is adding 1. So we're going to add 1 to both the right-hand side and the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, that 1's crossed out and it leaves us with 6x. The inequality sign is going to stay the same. because we haven't multiplied or divided by a negative number. Now we go ahead and add 17 plus 1 and we end up with 18. The only thing left to get x by itself is to get rid of the 6. And right now that 6 is being multiplied by x. So to get rid of that 6, all we need to do is divide both sides by 6. On the right hand side, the 6's will cross out and it'll leave us with an x. We still have this less than or equal to symbol, and 18 divided by 6 gives us 3. At this point, what we've written down is technically correct, but you'll pretty much never see your answers written that way. The typical convention would be to write the x first. So what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to take everything here and I'm going to mirror it, which means I write the x first and I mirror this symbol. Instead of it being a less than or equal to symbol, we're going to change it to a greater than or equal to symbol. And afterwards, we're going to write our 3 down. So my final answer would be x is greater than or equal to 3. This problem is a bit more complicated than the others, but the idea is exactly the same. We're going to take our inequality of negative 5w plus 5 is greater than or equal to negative 20, and we're going to solve it as if it were an equation. So we're trying to get w by itself. Here's w. We zoom out a little bit more, we have this negative 5, and if we look a little bit outside of that, we have a plus 5. We need to work from the outside in, so we're going to get rid of this plus 5 first. Instead of adding 5, we need to subtract 5. So that's what I need to do to both sides of the equation. On the left-hand side, these 5's cancel out, and it leaves me with negative 5w. We still have this greater than or equal to sign, but now we have to do this math, negative 20 minus 5. The signs of each of these two numbers are negative, so we're really adding the numbers together. 20 plus 5 gives us 25. The larger of these two numbers is 20, and 20 is negative, so we get negative 25. So now there's one more step to get w by itself. Here's w, and if we look at what's happening to it, w is being multiplied by negative 5. It's not being subtracted by 5 because if we look right in between the negative 5 and the w, there's nothing there. There's no symbol here. So w is being multiplied by negative 5, which means to get w by itself, we divide by negative 5. What I do to one side of the equation, I do to the other side. So the negative 5's go away, and it leaves us with w. But because we're dividing by a negative value, we need to keep this set of notes in mind. Anytime we divide by a negative number, we need to reverse the inequality sign. So we're going to reverse this greater than or equal to symbol, and it's going to become a less than or equal to symbol. Now we finish doing the math. Negative 25 divided by negative 5. That gives me a positive 5, and we're left with this as my final answer. W is less than or equal to 5. The first step for this inequality is to copy down the problem. So 11 is less than 5y plus 31. We need to get the y by itself. So here's my y, and I want to look at what's happening to y. Well, y is being multiplied by 5, and it's also being added to 31. We need to work from the outside in, so we're going to start with that plus 31, and we want to do the opposite of that. Instead of adding 31, we're going to subtract 31 from both sides of the inequality. The 31s on the right hand side go away, and on the left hand side we need to do 11 minus 31. 11 is positive, 31 is negative. These have opposite signs, so we're really subtracting the numbers together. When we subtract those numbers, we end up getting 20. The larger of these two values is 31, and 31 is negative, so my result is negative 20. We still have a less than symbol because we haven't multiplied or divided any numbers yet. All we've done is subtracted a value. And the right hand side stays as 5y. At this point, we look at what's happening to y, and y is being multiplied by 5. So we end up dividing both sides by 5. The 5's go away on the right hand side, and it leaves us with y. We still have this less than symbol, and negative 20 divided by 5 gives us negative 4. So we have negative 4 is less than y. But again, we really want to write a more formal answer. And all that means is we need to write the y first. So if I mirror everything here, we would be left with y, and instead of a less than sign, we're going to write a greater than sign, and we're going to keep that as a negative 4. So this would be my final answer. Y is greater than negative 4. Like always, my first step for this problem is to copy it down, and we have negative 14 is greater than negative 38 minus 4x. I want to get the x by itself. So here's my x. If I zoom out a little bit, we have a negative 4 that's being multiplied by x. And if I zoom out a little bit more, we have this negative 38. Because we're working our way from the outside in, I want to get rid of this negative 38 first. So what's the opposite of subtracting 38? Adding 38. So that's my first step in the problem, is to add 38 to both sides of the inequality. On the right hand side, the 38s go away, and we're left with negative 4x. We still have a greater than sign, and on the left hand side, we need to do this math. We have opposite signs, so we know we need to subtract the numbers. So 38 minus 14, that would give you 24. The larger of the two numbers is 38, and 38 is positive, so we end up with a positive 24, which is what I have written down. Our next step is to look at what's happening to x again, and x is being multiplied by negative 4 because they're right next to each other. The opposite of multiplication is division. So we're not just going to divide by 4, but we're going to divide by negative 4. And again, the reason for that is we want to get x completely alone. We don't want that negative sign to be with the x. So instead of just dividing by 4, we divide by negative 4. What I do to one side, I do to the other side. So on the left-hand side, we're also dividing by negative 4. And we can go ahead and cross out the negative 4s on the right side. On the right-hand side, we're left with just x. But because we're dividing by this negative number, we need to make sure we reverse this sign. So instead of it being a greater than symbol, we're going to change it to a less than sign. Now we do the division. 24 divided by 4 would give us negative 6. So as we've seen before, nothing is really wrong with this, and it might actually count it correct if you leave this as your answer. But a more formal way of writing the answer is to write your x variable first. So we can rewrite this as x, and I'm basically mirroring what we wrote earlier. I write my x first, and I flip this sign to become a greater than sign, and we have a negative 6 after it. So my final answer would be x is greater than negative 6.